I was born among the cotton, in the thickets where the air drags pollen and pain into your lungs. My mother said I came into the world at night when lightning struck an old oak on the hillside. Everyone thought it was a sign. And then they forgot. Here, they forget fast. Everything, except the whip and the silence that follows it. They named me Lily, but more often just girl. Or her. Sometimes I forgot what my name sounded like. I whispered it into a pillow made of corn leaves. Just so I wouldn't forget I was human. That I was once a little girl. That I used to have dreams. I remember the smell of morning. Not sunlight, we barely saw it. It smelled like a coal stove, sour sweat, and cornbread baked by old hands, slowly with weariness. My days began before the roosters. Water from the well, heavy like someone else's guilt. Then, the field. We walked there like soldiers without weapons. Every step like a last hope. But we walked. Sometimes it felt like we weren't working, but vanishing, bit by bit. A finger, a hair, a memory. One day just like the next. Only the overseer's face changed. But the pain, always the same. Maria and I stood side by side. Her hair was like a baby's, and her eyes, like a bird that had been caged too long. She never spoke of the past. Only once, when we hid from the rain under the barn, she whispered, "I loved someone, but he died, and I stopped singing." Then she went silent, forever. One day I burned my hand on the kettle. Not badly, but the skin blistered, and I couldn't hold the hoe. They put me in the cattle stall for the whole evening. No food, no words. It smelled of dung, fear, and someone else's despair. I sat on the floor, and the mosquitoes drank my blood like it was a feast. I stared through a crack in the boards and whispered a prayer. Not to God, to myself. So I wouldn't disappear completely. I often ask myself, where is the end? Where's the edge where it no longer hurts? But every time I understood, there is no end. Only night, long like a river, and my mother's voice, echoing in memory like a song forgotten long ago, but still hummed. You want to know if we ever had joy? We did. In the little things. In how old Nancy gave us dried fruit hidden in her sleeve. In how the boy Clement drew birds on the ground with charcoal. In how we, stealing a moment, sang without words so no one could hear us. We sang in whispers. We sang to remember who we were. Sometimes I felt that if I closed my eyes, everything would vanish. The shacks, the screams, the chains. And only the light would remain. I didn't know what that light was, but I felt it, like warmth in the chest, like a voice inside whispering, "You are more than you think." And for that, I lived. This is only the beginning. You're still here, aren't you? Back in those days, time moved differently. It didn't tick, it dripped, like dew from leaves into the morning's silence. Drip, drip, and each sound was like a memory of something you would never see again. I washed clothes by the river, barefoot, with my hands wrapped. The master's shirts, bed linens, handkerchiefs with monograms, as if their spotless fabric could somehow cleanse our filth. Sometimes I ironed their clothes and thought, how can cloth matter more than skin? But I never said it. No one did. Only the air around us would tighten whenever someone thought something they shouldn't. And then came that day. Master Winters was away. The house grew quiet. Only his wife and son remained. Mr. Charles, young, handsome, with eyes that held no depth. He looked at us like furniture, like walls, like something to be moved or thrown away. I was scrubbing the hallway floor. He came over and said, "Lift your head." I did, because not lifting it would have been worse. He looked at me for a long time. Too long. Then he smiled and walked away. The next day, he came again, called me into the pantry. It smelled of dust, spices, and fear. I didn't know what would happen, but inside, everything tensed. I stood like a shadow as he stepped closer. His hand touched my shoulder. I froze. "Can you keep quiet, Lily?" he asked. I nodded. "Good," he said. "Silence is golden, especially for someone like you." He left without doing anything, but I never forgot that evening, because from that moment on, I no longer felt like just a body. I became a fragile vessel that someone could shatter at any moment, simply because they wanted to. I told no one, not even Maria. Only at night, lying on straw, I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. And I whispered, "Lord, if you're there, don't let him touch me." But God was silent. Or, he spoke, just not the way we hoped. Sometimes his voice was in the rustle of grass. Sometimes in pain. Sometimes in the fact that we were still breathing. A week later, Mr. Charles took June, the girl with eyes like the autumn sky, said she was going to the city to help an aunt. But we knew, because 2 weeks later, only her clothes returned, washed, without scent, without trace. And then even the clothes disappeared. I looked at the sky. There was the moon, thin as a blade. And I wondered, if I jumped from the hill where we were sent to herd goats, would it hurt? Or would it all end quickly? But I didn't jump, because that evening, old Nancy whispered to me, "You're needed. You haven't said everything to this world. You haven't shown it all." And I believed her, because sometimes faith isn't light. It's just stubbornness. Surviving, no matter what. I sewed at night. Hidden stitches, little crosses along the hem. No one knew, but each cross was a name. A name of someone taken. Someone vanished. Someone who no longer sang. I didn't embroider for beauty. I did it for memory, to keep them from being erased from within. And each time I pushed the needle through, I'd say to myself, "You were, you lived, you are." Sometimes, when everything went still, even the leaves, even the air, I could hear their footsteps, not of the living, but of those who remained in the ground, yet never left, those who died here, in this land that breathes pain. They didn't speak, but I could feel them, nearby, watching, following, breathing down my neck, so I wouldn't fall. That evening was different. Mari didn't come to dinner. We searched with our eyes, but no one asked aloud, because to ask aloud means you noticed, and if you noticed, you'd have to answer for it. In the morning, we found her under the stairs, unconscious, her whole body marked, her face unrecognizable. She was breathing, but barely. Someone whispered. It was him, again him, but no one said his name, and no one went upstairs. We knew how to fear better than how to speak. I sat with her until dawn, in silence. She opened her eyes and, with difficulty, breathed out, "Leave this place, Lily, while you can." I took her hand. It was cold, like winter in the heart. I didn't know where to go, but that night I decided I would leave. Old Eli, who worked at the stables, knew the path. He didn't speak much, but one day he gave me a small bundle of bread and quietly said, "If you go, go into the night, and don't look back." I waited a week, then another, and when the moon was full, like the eye of God, staring without blinking, I made my choice. At night, in silence, without farewells, without sounds, only the wind as a witness. I took a piece of bread, water, and a small pouch of needles, because memory cannot be left behind. And I went, barefoot, along the path behind the barn, past raspberry bushes and the old pear tree, past the trees where we used to hide as children. Everything like for the last time. I walked for a long time. I don't know how long. The night turned cold. The grass scratched my legs. The owls watched every move. And inside, only fear. Like a beast. It didn't let me think. Only move. But dawn found me on the road, open, naked like truth, and behind me, hoofbeats. 1, 2, 5. Horses. They caught me, without a word, tied my hands, yanked my hair. I screamed, but no one heard. Only the birds took flight, as if they were my words. And then, darkness again. I woke in the barn, hands in chains, body not mine, lips dry, and in front of me, him, Mr. Charles, calm, confident, whip in hand. "I thought you were smarter, Lily," he said, "but it seems you want to be made an example of." He didn't yell, just looked, then turned and walked away, left me in the dark. I didn't cry. I only prayed, not for myself, for Mari, for Nancy, for those who were gone. And again, I heard their whisper, the ones beneath the earth. They said, "You are still alive. That means it's not the end." The next morning, they brought me into the yard. Everyone was watching, in silence, some with fear, some with empty eyes. And he stood in front of me and said, "No one escapes without punishment. Everyone will remember." I waited for the blow, but he didn't strike. He only leaned in and whispered, "We will break you, slowly, but completely." Then he walked away, and I stood there, chains on my hands, blood on my lips, but inside, heat, like a flame. I didn't know where it came from, but it was there, small, but alive. And it whispered, "No, not completely." Punishment didn't come right away. They knew how to wait. They knew that fear was stronger than pain. For several days, I lived in anticipation. No sleep, no rest, only footsteps outside that always seemed closer than they really were. And then morning, gray as ash. They brought me out to the yard, to that very post. They called it the silent witness, because it saw everything and said nothing. I didn't scream, not because it didn't hurt, just because screaming was a gift, and we were not worthy of gifts. The first blow, like an explosion. The air vanished. The second, like a wave. After that, everything blurred. My back burned like a bull set on fire. But I held on, because inside, beyond the pain, I suddenly saw my mother's face. She stood in my memory with a headscarf and softly whispered, "Just don't lose yourself." And I didn't. After the punishment, they carried me. Old Eli lifted me like a child. His hands trembled, but he said nothing, just laid me on the hayloft and covered me with old sacks. Nancy came at night. She brought ointment, spoke in whispers, as if we were in a graveyard. "You're stubborn. Stubbornness isn't always strength," she said. I nodded, but inside I thought something else. Stubbornness is all I have left. I didn't move for several days, just stared at the ceiling. There were cracks, through which the light broke in like hope through fear. I counted the dust motes in the air. I prayed, and again remembered childhood. I do remember laughing, as a little girl, before my father disappeared, before we were sold. He carried me on his shoulders and sang a song. I don't remember the words, but I remember the warmth of his back. Back then, I believed in God. He was in my father's hands, in my mother's voice, in the earth beneath my feet. And then it all vanished, like someone wiped the world clean. But that evening, when I thought I would die in that hayloft, something strange happened. A small boy came to me, Thomas, the cook's son. He was about 6 years old. He quietly sat beside me and pulled a cloth from under his shirt. Inside it, a piece of sugar, small as a fingernail. He placed it in my palm and whispered, "So it can be sweet for you, even just a little." And I cried, for the first time in many years. Not from pain, from the fact that this child, who had grown up in the dark, had found light within himself and shared it. I thought, Maybe we're still human, despite everything. Since then, everything changed. I became someone else. Not stronger, not harsher, deeper, like water that no longer fears fire, because it has already been inside it. I started to watch, to listen, to notice who came, who left, who whispered in corners, and who disappeared without a trace. I sewed at night, not just crosses, but signs. Old ones. The ones passed down in whispers. The ones only women remember. In my hands was a needle, and in my heart a story, not just mine, of all who came before me. And I knew, one day someone will read that cloth. Like a map, like a prayer, like a scream sewn into the fabric. And if you are hearing my voice now, maybe you are the one who will unfold it. Time does not heal. It only hides, like an old rag thrown over a shattered mirror. So the cracks aren't seen, but they're still there. I learned to live with them, not to stitch them up, just to wear them, like a scar that became part of the body. I returned to work again, not right away, slowly, as if learning to move all over again. The overseers no longer touched me, maybe because they knew I had already stood at the edge, or maybe because I no longer looked down, only forward. Maria was gone. They took her the same day I tried to escape, said to a new house. But we knew. I sewed a small cloth for her, with her name, in red thread. Then I hid it under a floorboard in the corner of the cabin. Let it stay. Something. Anything. Thomas grew older. He still brought me little things, stones, feathers, bits of sugar. Looked at me as if I had the answers. And I knew nothing. Only silence. Only breath. Only the understanding that sometimes you just have to be, so someone else can survive. I kept sewing to the very end. Every evening. Every night. Whispering names. Hiding crosses. And I knew the fabric remembers. Even if people forget. One evening, as the sun was setting and the air was thick like honey, I felt it. Everything. Not death. Not the end. Just everything. As if something inside said, "You've done your part." I walked into the yard, sat on the porch, watched the fireflies, and thought, the sky is the same. Here or there. Over the masters. Over the slaves. Over those who have left. And those who are still to come. Maybe you live now, somewhere far away, in a city without whips, in a house with warmth, and you hear my voice, not as a scream, but as an echo, a whisper across centuries. If so, don't forget, not just me, not just Lily, but the one who stood beside me, the one who stayed silent but held your hand, the one who fell so you could walk. And if one day you see a piece of cloth with red thread, stop. Read. It may carry my name. Or yours. Because we are all from the same fire. And if one of us burns, the others see the light. This is not about revenge. Not about pain. Not about the past. It's about strength. About memory. About a life that doesn't disappear, even if you're no longer here. And if you ever feel silence, don't be afraid. Maybe it's me, watching you, and silently saying, you are free, live,